Welcome to the Humanity Mosaic Podcast, exploring authenticity and connection with Dr. E. Thank you for joining us today as we explore issues that affect our relationships in today's world. And now welcome to today's episode with Dr. E.
Hello, everyone. So happy to be here with you today. And I'm especially delighted because today I am bringing on a guest who is not only a phenomenal teacher, but a very, very dear friend. Today, I'll be talking with Hollie Holden. Hollie's a mother, an artist, a writer, and an ordained interfaith minister. She studies and teaches A Course in Miracles. She has also studied and teaches the Enneagram and has added internal family systems to her skill sets. She's an amazing practitioner. She is currently writing her first collection of poetry, and I can't wait to see that because I've had the benefit of reading many of Hollie's poems over the years. Hollie not only teaches these things, but she applies them all to her life. This is a woman who truly walks the talk. And what I want you to know about her and what I want you to experience when she comes on is the wisdom and the strength that comes from her being a presence of true love, true authentic love in this world. So without any more words, I would love to welcome Hollie Holden to the screen.
I'm so glad to be here. Thank you so much. We said it at the same time. I thought I was meant to say thank you for the introduction.
Well, you're welcome for the introduction. And this is going to be the most beautiful and at the same time warm, funny, entertaining podcast session ever because I'm with you. And that's what happens when we're together.
It was such a good start. We both just started talking at the same time.
Well,
already making each other laugh.
Exactly. We go right there. I wish that we were physically together so that I could just get a good, warm Hollie Holden hug and give you one right back. And I'm just so happy to be here with you today. Anytime I can spend some quality time in your presence, the love just seeps into my bones. And that can carry me for a very long time. But with everyone here who doesn't know you, I want to introduce everyone who's listening to you, your wisdom, your loving presence, all of the things about you that just make the world a better place to be. And you have a way, Hollie, of actually being the presence of love. You just are the presence of love. And so I'm going to ask you to just introduce yourself a little bit and tell people who are listening and watching a little bit about the way that you are showing up in the world right now, the things that you're doing, and the way that Spirit is sort of guiding you to be right now in this period of time.
Oh, that's a very lovely invitation, just to sit and reflect. And just as you were saying, to do that in your presence and in the field of our friendship. Because, really honestly right now, a huge way that I'm showing up as the presence of love to the best of my ability, I always like to say, so that we can always forgive ourselves when we don't do that. It's very important. But to the best of my ability, that's what I'm up to. And honestly, one of the biggest ways I'm having to do that right now is by being in my relationships in a way that I'm bringing extra presence and extra effort. So I'm parenting both of my children through the sort of later teenage years and finding that what's required of me is very different. And I'm having to learn fast and I'm having to shift and I'm having to heal some old patterns. And it's like, whoa, another learning curve, just when you think you're sort of, kind of getting it, like there's always another thing, right? I have a friend who's very sick, who I've been really supporting and helping on in the way that I love to show up, which is very practical, also with my presence and my attention, but very practical, lots of cooking, lots of, making sure everything's okay physically, for her recovery, that kind of thing. In my teaching, I'm finding that people really, really need places that are made of a settled nervous system. So, the world is rocking us around right now. And our study groups are very much international groups. So, we never get to sit in the feeling of like, oh, well, in the UK, this is happening. We never get to do that. And not that we really want to anyway, but it's the people we serve, the people we invite into an oasis of presence. I'm finding that I really need to be even more settled and really listening deeply to what my guidance is, so that I can support them. And those are just a few of the ways that I feel like right now I'm being asked to show up. And it's such a lovely question, Deborah, because I learned from this woman I don't even know when this was, like maybe 4 or 5 years ago. I learned from this woman that she asked her master, how do I receive my daily guidance from God? How do I hear the voice of love? How will I know what you want me to do? And he said, oh, that's easy. The day becomes the answer. That it's like whatever's in front of me becomes the answer. And right now I'm finding that really powerful because the world feels really big. And I have no control over many things in the world, of course, which is always true. But right now, of course, we're all feeling like, whoa, this is, we're having to kind of revisit that truth. And so for me to show up on my patch with the people I love, and that's a big circle for me, that's a lot of people, for me to show up with presence and give my full attention feels like my work right now. It feels like what I'm being guided to do. So, yeah.
That is so beautiful, Hollie, and so very true. I think back to the years when I was practicing as a therapist, when I was, much younger. And when I first started seeing clients in therapy, I would talk to my mother after I talked to a particular client. And I'd just say, Mom, I'm just hoping that I can help people the way that whatever way that I can. And she was so funny because she would always say to me, first of all, I don't know why you chose to do what you do. Sitting and listening to people's problems all day long makes no sense to me. But since you chose it, baby girl, I want you to know that just being there for people, you don't really have to do a whole lot more than that. But when you give them your full love and your full attention, the gift of your presence is so much more powerful than you will ever understand it. And, I remember that. I still remember that sometimes when I'm in the presence of someone who's really hurting, that just being there, being willing to listen, being willing to hold space in a safe way. And one of the many things I can say about you is that there aren't many people in the world who can hold space like Hollie Holden. You are the original, authentic space holder. And we'll get around to a little story about that later. But Hollie, I know that you've been on a journey with the Enneagram for a significant amount of time. Can you share a little bit about that journey and how that is helping you to be the presence of love right now in the world?
Well, I'm immediately drawn to start with my first experience of the Enneagram, because I feel like it's been this gift that's been given to me for so many years. And yet that first experience I had was such a big opening for me that I often like to kind of reflect on it, really, because the Enneagram, I think until you really see it working, for me anyway, I'm so practical. I'm sort of like Virgo rising, Capricorn, 4 with loads of 1, and so I like to see how things really work, on a practical level, on an emotional level, that I can feel it in my body. And so for me, my introduction to the Enneagram happened in a way where, as a 4, I have a number 8 dad, and which I am deeply grateful for these days. But when I was little and I was very sensitive and I hadn't done any inner work, it was a lot. And his way of loving me was to keep me safe. And my way of wanting to be loved was come and sit down and look at my drawing and ask me questions, and that just wasn't his way. Like, I can now see it very clearly. But when I was little, he would also make big, bold statements that sort of came from his tummy, and I would sort of end up being very rattled by that. So the way the Enneagram arrived for me in my life was, my early 20s, and we did a family workshop. And the minute I learned that I was a 4 and my dad was an 8, it was like this flow of love opened up. It was crazy. It was like, when you see on a movie, like they release this big boulder from a river or something, and then the river goes, poof. It was like that in my system. And I was like, oh my goodness, he's been loving me all along, and I really let that in. And since then, I was sitting there the other day with my mum and dad, and my dad and I were being pretty kind of punchy with each other, because we both enjoy that. I think people don't realize how similar the 4 and the 8 are until as a 4 you grow up a little bit in yourself and you go, oh, actually, this is really fun energy. And my mum said, she said, I never thought I'd say this, but you two are a real match for each other, because I think she used to experience worrying about when I was going to get wounded and, what he was going to say next. And now it's like this kind of even playing field. And that huge original opening in me, it's like a little bit like, when you have a healing experience and you then don't doubt it ever. Do you know what I mean? It's like you go, this is just so cool. This is like, I just want everyone to know about this, because, I then, fast forward to now, like the fact that I know my children's types, the fact that I know my type, the fact that I know, Robert's type, who's parenting along with me, the fact that I know that my children are the same types as my parents. So Christopher is my dad's type, then 8, and Bo is my mum's type, a 6. How do you do life without knowing that? I'm not sure. So for me, it's the awareness and the way of working with the Enneagram systemically that actually for me these days is really, because I'm so relational, like that's how it helps me show up as the presence of love, because I can take things less personally, which as a 4, that's super helpful, because I can stay in my center, or I can return, when I do go flying off somewhere into reaction. And for me, that's just key. Like that's absolutely key, because without that level of understanding, without the frame of reference that the Enneagram provides for me for why people are being the way they're being, I'm not sure how I could possibly be, any percentage of how I am in the world. So I hope that answers your question. I'm not entirely sure if it does.
No, it completely does, because, one of the things that I know both of us love putting out into the world is the reality that when you learn the Enneagram, first of all, everything changes. Everything changes. And the change initially is a bit startling. It's, oh my God, how could I not have seen this? Why didn't I know this? And I know in my case and yours, it has made us better wives. It has made us better parents. And it has given us the ability, the capacity to have deeper relationships, deeper friendships, and to really be able to go past just the superficial, but to really meet people in the heart space. And I don't believe it's possible to do that without going on your own inner journey. That's when the heart opens up. And first, it embraces all of who you happen to be. And then you're ready. I love what you said about, you don't take things quite as personally anymore. You recognize, as you well know, Jean is a 9. And sometimes when my beautiful 9 man goes to his 9 cave, many years where I felt sort of, wow, I have more of your time, more of your attention. But now it's like, cool, chill. He just needs to cave out for a while. I'll go in and I'll take him a beer or something later, but I'll leave him be. And, just these little epiphanies that we have that are really Enneagram related. It's like, instead of just looking at a person and just being able to see the outside, we get to see a little bit more of their operating system. And that is so very helpful. I know you've been on this journey for a very long time. And I also know that you study some very interesting other things like internal family systems and A Course in Miracles. And you've become quite the teacher of all 3 of these different modalities. So how are you doing with integrating them all? And I know that you are. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh my goodness. Well, the funny thing is you say that. I get so last year we consciously brought them all together in a 3-day event. And I spent the whole 3 days not being able to contain the coming together in my system, because they are so powerful when they're combined. Because A Course in Miracles is really about removing the blocks to the awareness of love's presence. That's the whole intention of that text. And so what you're really doing is, the Course tells you can't speak about what love is, because love is. Yes. What you can do is you can work on the blocks you have to the awareness of its presence in you. Right. So enter the Enneagram, because all of that is about blind spots. Yeah. If yes, you can have the intention to remove the blocks to the awareness of love's presence. That's a really great intention to hold. But if you have no idea how you're blocking your awareness of love, you're kind of lost. So for me, the Enneagram gives you this incredible map so that you can see, like, oh, I'm in my thing. I've learned about. So I'll just use myself as an example. I've learned about at point 4, I have this particular pattern where I massively withdraw, for example. And I just think everyone does that, when I'm at the beginning of my journey, because I'm thinking, well, I just, of course, project myself onto everyone and assume that everyone's sort of must be a little bit similar to me. When you learn that you're not, you go, oh, I've been given this kind of roadmap to what my blocks are. And then working in conjunction with A Course in Miracles, it's like, well, hang on a minute, this is so cool, because I get to be shown, like, my guidance can work through the lens of the Enneagram and show me, hey, it straightens me out. It's like, you're out of whack there. Like, you're doing your thing over there. It's like an honesty that can happen with the Enneagram that comes with innocence. And I go, oh God, I really am. Thank you very much for showing me that. And so an example of that, the other day, I was dropping Bo off to the station. So my daughter Bo is 18, and she was going off on a trip, and I began to go into my 4 thing, right, which takes me away from presence, takes me away from like being in that moment with her, because I start to get a little bit emotional, a little bit of 1. I was getting a bit controlling. I could just feel myself going and doing all the things. She then went quite sort of anxious in her sort of 6-iness and a bit panicky, and the train was coming, and so I just stopped and I was like, okay, what's really helpful here? And I realized that what was helpful was 8 energy, interestingly. Like, that was going to get us closer to being in genuine presence with each other, to really experience each other again. So I literally said, like, I just talked about my dad. I said, what would he do? And Bo said, oh, he'd say you're not going for that long, and da-da-da-da. And it was just this kind of factual, cool thing that flicked us both into the awareness of love's presence in that moment, because that's what we're really feeling is love for each other. That's who we really are. And then the internal family systems comes in there, because I can see that my parts, in internal family systems, you're talking about the true self, and then you've got all the parts of you. I can see so clearly my parts, the way they play out and how fourish they are. But I also have a lot of one-ish parts, as I was saying. I also have so many two-ish parts. Oh my goodness, I have to really manage my overextending, my crazy kind of, running to help patterns, those parts in me. And so internal family systems mixed in with the Enneagram, mixed in with this essential truth that comes through for me, of course, in Miracles and other teachings as well. But that's one of my main plugging in points, to the absolute truth of who I am. When I bring them together, I find that I just get given creative solutions, and I get the ability to sort of bump out of myself, like bump out of my normal, and remember, for a start, the other superpowers all around the Enneagram symbol, but also how to deal with, my very wounded parts as well, which then the internal family systems comes and helps. So for me, it's like I'm a map person. So I have this kind of map that goes like across, but it also has wells that go down, so that when I reach a certain bump in the road, I know how to go in and do the healing work I need to do, and ask for the help that I need in that moment if it's too big for me on my own. And that's how I navigate, and that's what I feel passionate about supporting other people to do, from this place of presence as best I can, and my favorite thing ever is just sitting with people and just allowing clarity to descend. When that feeling when you're in presence, and I've got all these maps and it's all available, and it might be helpful or it might not, but more than anything, because I do my inner work with these maps, I get to show up and be in presence. And just as you were saying before, how your mum would tell you, it's like, I really do know that if we genuinely do our inner work, and this is all about inner work, because we cannot change anyone. We can't convince anyone. We can't even convince anyone that the Enneagram's really great, because people are going to do what they're going to do. But if we genuinely can bring these things together and be in this alchemy in ourselves and just turning everything to gold as best we can, we end up being people who can hold space for other people, who can sit with what is painful, because we're doing it in ourselves, and so that's kind of how they come together. But as I say, it sort of almost causes an explosion in me when I hold all three at once, because they work so beautifully together.
I love the way that you responded to that, because we're living through times right now where so many are sitting and kind of wringing your hands and trying to figure out, what can I do? And the space doesn't necessarily feel safe or painless. The space often feels very rough and disorientating. And I know that people are looking for and hungry for ways to calm down their own nervous system, ways to be in connection with people who don't necessarily share their same views, and to be able to, at the end of the day, close your eyes and just say, well done, tomorrow's another day. And that is not the easiest thing to do right now. But whether it's A Course in Miracles, whether it's the Enneagram, whether it is internal family systems, there are many ways of being able to do that inner work. And I just admire the way that not only you teach all of these, but the way that you live it, Hollie. I'm someone who has close, upfront, and personal line of sight to your life. And I just want to share with the people that are listening that you walk the talk. You absolutely walk the talk. And you have held space for me more times than I can even enumerate at this point, but I want to share our funny story about being at Montserrat together. And I will let you tell this story because I just think it's just one of the great delights of my life. Because that's where we first came together. That was our meeting place.
We did. Yeah, we saw each other across the room and it was just instant. Like, oh, where have you been? And and then it was just that incredible moment where you got to be with the Black Madonna, who meant so much to you, who means so much to you. And I got to do one of my superpowers, which is on a physical, practical level, but also energetically really allow you to be fully in that moment and to experience what you needed to experience. Like it's my joy when I know that something's happening and it's not going to be shut down. It's going to be fully embodied. It's going to be what it needs to be. And so I was standing at the bottom of the stairs. You were up the top of these little stairs and people were trying to come through and they were not getting past. And I turned into it. I didn't even know what I was at that moment. I was like, nobody gets past me. And I knew you were still there because you had fallen down on the floor. And I knew you were still there because your little stiletto heels were poking out like that, like sideways from where. So I couldn't see you, but I knew you were still down there. And I was like, as long as I can see those heels, nobody gets past me. And that was our initiation into our beyond friendship, our familyship that is, that means so much to us both, because it's like that's the level of friendship that we get to enjoy with each other. And the fact that we started there and the fact that it was your stilettos is my favorite thing, because we all know your complete allergy to anything flat.
Oh, yeah.
No, it never would have been like sneakers poking out. It had to be the stilettos. So and I think that's the thing, is those are the moments when those are what are we doing our inner work for, to let you have this full awakening and whatever was going on for you. Like, I don't need to know that, but for you to be in that fully, it's like, that's what we do all of this for. And that's the point. That brings me to the point of, in these times, our work is to receive each other and love each other and remind each other that we're not alone. And we can only do that. We can only show up as the presence of love in the way that will bring us joy and will have us be on purpose if we are doing our inner work. So some people go, oh, well, you're just talking about your feelings, talk about yourself, all those things. But you get to a certain point where you go, no, that is not the deal here. If we don't do this, we cannot show up and support other people and to remain in our activism and to support the unfolding of whatever is going to unfold in the direction of the good. We can't do that if we're completely burnt out, if we don't know how to deal with things when they come up, and if we end up with no strength at all to build what we do want to build, to be in relationship with ourselves in a way where we find where our true power lies, because so much of what we're experiencing is powerlessness. But if we can let things be as they are enough for us to go inside and find out where our power lies, we find we are enormously powerful.
Yes.
Enormously powerful, especially when we join together, especially when our intention is to hold each other to that extent, to that depth. So it's completely the perfect kind of, coming round this circle with each other, because that's the gold in this whole inner work process, in my experience.
Absolutely. Hollie, that example that we just shared of, something that we shared together, in order to be able to hold space, there has to be space in you. And, the point of doing the inner work is to clear out all of those things that no longer serve you, all of those false narratives, all those negative stories that you've told yourself, and to open the space inside to be able to hold love. And if you can hold love for yourself, if you can do the intentional work of finding your wounds, touching them and healing them, and clearing out the negative messages that you've just held on to for so long, then you can truly embody love. And when you embody love in that way, then you can give love to pretty much anyone. You truly can. I mean, living through very difficult times, I just want people to hear that while sometimes it may be hard to understand or accept, but everyone is deserving of some level of love. And in order to help heal the world, which I know many of us would like to do right now, the work begins with you. You know, if you have a long list of all the things that you want someone else to change in order for you to feel whole, then you have it kind of twisted. You have to turn that around and recognize that to turn on your power and to elevate and turn up your light, then do the inner work. And that is the point of everything that you and I are talking about today. And believe it or not, Hollie, Ezzy's going to throw a party, because if we end right here, right now, we will have made it on time. So thank you so much for being with me, my dear friend. And I think we need to go back to Montserrat. I have a pair of stilettos that haven't made it there yet.
And let's do it.
Yes, we definitely must do that. And I hope that you're not getting sick.
Well, I'm on the end of it, so I'm so grateful. My voice
has held out,
and I'm kind of crying from coughing. So I'm amazed that my voice has held out for this half an hour. It was clearly meant to happen.
You know, you have no reason to be amazed, because in the world that we live in, of course your voice held out for this. I love you so much. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Ezzy, for holding space for us to have this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on today's episode of the Humanity Mosaic Podcast with Dr. E. For more information, please visit DeborahEgerton.com, and be sure to check out theAuthenticSelfCommunity.com to continue your journey.